It's safe to say that problems were rife in the young republic in 1781 and 1782. And there's talk in the air. In fact, Washington actually receives a letter from a Colonel Louis Nicola, who says, basically, "Dear General Washington, please take it all over. Why don't you become our American king or dictator?" Washington was appalled by this letter that he received in 1782, and he wrote back quickly and said, that's not what this cause has been all about, to go from one kind of a monarchy to maybe the makings of some sort of a dictatorship. So Washington himself was adamantly opposed to, shall we say, abusing power in any way, even though he had tremendous power in his hands as the leader of the Continental Army. But that doesn't mean that other individuals weren't interested in playing with that power, and that's what now will happen as we get deeper into the Newburgh Conspiracy. In fact, there's a group of individuals in the Continental Congress, and they want to see the Army go out into the field, threaten the population if need be, certainly raise some sort of cane, and to try to, shall we say, frighten the population in getting behind the notion of giving real taxation authority to the Congress, so this penniless government that we've talked about will become much more powerful and able to deal with the financial problems of the day. These gentlemen are led by a man by the name of Robert Morris, not a well-known name today, but actually at the time was a critical individual. He was the superintendent of finance of the Continental Congress, and he, as the superintendent, as an assistant whose name is Gouverneur Morris. They're not related. Morris, Gouverneur, is well known as one of the authors of the Constitution of 1787. And a few other individuals. Alexander Hamilton was in Congress once, having served on Washington's staff. James Madison was around, a few others along that line. And they thought maybe the notion of having Washington take the Army into the field, threatening the population, might actually do the trick. In other words, use military force to affect public policy, and when you're doing that, you're really turning civil-military relations upside down, because in freedom-loving republics, the military is always subordinate to the civilian authority. Well, what's going to happen is Hamilton will write a letter shortly after this news of peace is on its way and suggest to Washington that using the Army may not be a bad idea. What you should do is put a demonstration of force and then bring that force under control. But a little frightening would do a lot of good, and perhaps the Army would get financial justice. Washington then wrote in early March of 1783 that we are, and I'm quoting, approaching the gulf of civil horror. And he is genuinely concerned about what is going to happen. Now, these same leaders in Congress, they know probably Washington will not do their bidding. And so Robert Morris, with a little bit of help from Gouverneur, not so much from the other individuals I mentioned, will actually go to the backup candidate to lead the way, to lead the Army into the field, and that individual is Horatio Gates, second in command in Newburgh. Gates is more commonly known as the hero of Saratoga, even though he didn't really win the battle. It was Benedict Arnold who carried the day, but Gates got the credit as the overall commander-in-chief. Gates had lost an army in the South at the Battle of Camden in August of 1780. He was in a state of disgrace. He's writing Congress over and over again, please let me redeem my good name. Give me a court-martial so I can prove I'm innocent, that it wasn't my fault we lost this battle. Congress doesn't know what to do with him. They send him to Newburgh, and they put him second in command under Washington. So a message is going to be sent from the Morrises to Horatio Gates, and that message is simple. It's time. And Gates understood, because we know there's connections between Gates and Morris, and what they will do, and this message will go out on Monday, March 10th of 1783. We call it the first Newburgh Address. It's a very threatening document, And I'd just like to read you a few portions from this first Newburgh Address that went out and circulated among the officers. It said, first of all, we must, and I quote, move beyond the meek language of entreating memorials, the milk and water style of our earlier petitions. It warned the Army, especially the officers leading the men, that above all else we must not grow old in poverty, wretchedness, and contempt. And then it goes on to say, and this is truly very threatening, that if peace comes, nothing shall separate you from your arms but death. So we're going to have a peace, but the army is still going to be in existence. Obviously, it's going to be doing something, perhaps having even a coup against the national government under the Articles. And then there is this final item, and it says, and I quote, suspect the man who would advise you to more moderation and longer forbearance. Suspect George Washington. That's what that quote says. Suspect your leader. And the point is that this document calls for a meeting of the officers to assemble at this, what is called the New Building, or the Temple of Virtue, a building that Washington had all the soldiers build high atop a hill there at the encampment. And we're going to get together and we're going to meet under Gates's authority the very next day, Tuesday, March 11th. Well, when Washington found out about this, he said this was totally unacceptable. And in the orders of the day on Tuesday, March 11th, Washington will write, and he'll say that I know you have grievances, but we also have a command structure, and I have not approved that meeting. That meeting is unauthorized. However, Washington says, I want you to meet to discuss your grievances in full, and I want you to meet under my authority. I am the commander-in-chief. So I would like you to gather on Saturday, March 15th, the actual Ides of March. Meet on that day at high noon at the Temple of Virtue, that building high atop this particular hill. Discuss your grievances in full, and then send me a report of whatever you have decided to do. What Washington implied was very directly that he would not attend this meeting, he would not attempt to influence the officers in their decision-making, and that, well, we just would wait and see what happened. He'd wait on their report. That's very, very interesting, isn't it? Was George Washington really willing to let those officers meet without him being present? This is what one historian has called, this whole sequence in here, the new nation's most dangerous hour. And I'll let you think about, would George Washington actually, of all things, tell a little white lie and perhaps actually be thinking about attending that meeting and convincing those officers the worst thing they can do would be to turn against the very population that they were seeking to liberate?